There's a lot of people, I've seen a lot of comments out there about, don't privatize the VA, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like the worst thing in the world that could happen. One, I think a lot of people hear that and they think that that means 100%, just like, okay, VHA shut down. There's no longer a VHA. Instead, there's just contracts out to all these civilian providers. You're going to Kaiser now, right? That's most likely never going to be the case, right? I mean, I don't see that. It's more of the supplemental aspect with community care, with a more, I guess, codified version that's just solidified in there, that that this is where you just go now. You don't have to, if you don't have a place near you, you don't even need to call them, right? You just go to that doctor and it's taken care of. So one, it's not shutting down the entire VA is what we're imagining. We're imagining a supplemental to the existing structure. Okay, so we have an overlay throughout the United States. Bam, then you got all of the medical centers, then you got an overlay of all the clinics, and then you have an overlay of all of these potential partnerships. Okay. The VA has something that it's almost kind of like a BRAC, okay, on the VA side. So for those that remember what BRACs are the base realignment and closures, right? So when they go through and everybody's stressed out that their base is going to get closed, right? Maybe you're on a short list or something. So the VA kind of has something like that, and it's called the AIR report, and it's the Asset and Infrastructure Review, okay? What they do, and this is why I hate bumper sticker ideas, man. It's you got to look into things before you start coming up with a real concrete opinion. So the Asset and Infrastructure Review, what they're doing is they're looking at the population of veterans, and as we migrate and how the usage at different VA facilities, and when you go to your VA facility, do you know if it's being maximized, or is it 80%, or is it 70%? Do they have rooms cordoned off that they just don't even use? Are they having staffing issues? Are there not as many veterans through the door compared to 5 years ago? Is that a constant decrease down? These are all huge red flags. And it's kind of like a BRAC. They will readjust, move things, decide to close down a clinic, put a clinic somewhere else as we're moving across the country. So imagine for a moment, if you will, we have this country that's filled with veterans all over. We're all equally important. There's not one veteran that's more important than the other, okay? We all earn these benefits and we should be able to access them. Imagine for a moment if it was no additional outside resources, period, ever, no way. We have to do it all at the VA. Cool if you live next to a VA, but that really sucks for the other, whatever the number is, 40%, 30%, I don't know. It's a lot of veterans. It's not fair to them. So then the question is how do you fix that? Well, you could build a clinic there. Well, that's going to cost money. Now you have to run that facility. Now you got to hire staff. Now you're going to pay pensions. You're going to pay out the retirements on these people that you hired that were never hired before. You're going to grow the government, right? Which is expenditures. So when you're hiring government employees, it's not just hiring a government employee, right? Now you have the union you're dealing with. You also have all the retirements that come into play after the fact, an ongoing expense, right? You get to, if somebody gets hurt, there's a workers' comp issue. You have all the HR problems. All of that gets resolved when you write a contract and you have somebody else do it, right? So depending on the information that's pooled, and I can't remember when the last one was, the last air, it must have been 3 years ago, 4 years ago, not that long ago, there was an air report done, and they did some jockeying around, and maybe they put one clinic, took it from one medical facility and put it in another, trying to offload things and what have you. But the idea here is that the VHA is such a gigantic organization, one, super expensive, two, 3 doesn't necessarily meet the needs of all the people it's supposed to serve by law.
Mm-hmm.
How can they fix it? This is the only way. This is absolutely the only way to do it. And it's the only cost effective way, in my opinion. Even if it costs more on its face, it's less in the long run, in my opinion. And it's easy to pull the plug on certain things. And as veterans contrast or constrict, right? As the veteran population constricts, well, now it's just less in that area, right? If everybody moves, well, then that's just gone. You have no building to worry about. You have no employees to worry about. You have nothing. So how would you like it if it was, you could only get care if you live in these areas, right?
Yeah.
You have to move there. That's where you have to live. But we'll take care of you, but you got to move there. And in fact, if you can't live there, we'll build some barracks for you and you can live in those, right? That just seems horrific. So I think that just from a logical perspective, Clay, I think that it's really the only way to satisfy the obligation, right? Because there is an obligation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do it to the people that are in remote areas, right? And remote is even the wrong word because people think, oh my God, there's four veterans in these remote areas. There's 4, right? No, what I'm saying is in the areas that are more than a 45-minute drive, an hour drive from the VA health. Really, I have 73 doctors in this kind of retirement area where I live.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a vacation-y type of an area or retirement area. There's all kinds of doctors and hospitals, and I can't go to any of them. I got to drive an hour, right? So anyway, back to you, Clay.
Yeah, I mean, I am so glad. I really loved how you painted that picture. 3 major VA facilities in every single state. Let's just assume that's the case. That's still not enough, right? Look at the state of California. There are tons of veterans in California. Okay, look at Northern Virginia. We have I'm going to include Washington, D.C. because it's right across the river, right? There's a VA facility in Washington, D.C. There's a VA facility in Fort Belvoir. There's a VA facility in Fredericksburg. There's a VA facility in Richmond. All of those are within a 2-hour span of each other, right? 4 facilities just in one state. That doesn't include actual Northern Virginia and then Southern Virginia, if you will. And so 3 major VA facilities in every state is not going to even scratch the surface. And I would make the argument, I'm going to say something wild here. I would make the argument that if you don't do some kind of supplemental privatization of the workforce for VA healthcare and for veterans, you are, in the most literal sense, telling those veterans who don't have proximal access, you're not getting healthcare.